Good evening, everybody. I hope you're having a good evening. I hope you had a great morning, day, safe, commuting and maybe staying at home and kind of enjoying the scenery. And I hope tomorrow sees you well too. In this video, I kind of wanted to take a moment and update. Um, I'm updating this process of renaming file names, and actually, it turned out to be kind of interesting. I know a lot of people. I know it's quite an interesting a challenge, I think, and I don't mean from like a perspective of necessarily saying like a unique name, but I want to be able to identify a file with a website. I want to be able to have a user specific format. And I mean, that would mean parsing like tons of files from all over the place. And that's quite an interesting challenge, and I really love to simplify things, at least for myself, so it takes a while to kinda narrow it down, and I don't really know what kind of process I need until I actually start doing it. But let me show you what I have. Okay, so this is again this application, but I've added a few more little interesting caveats into it, and I'll run it for Skyrim here in a second. And this disappears. I have no idea why this disappears. We could probably fire it off again, but it has the title of the game, and I think it's got something to do with. I'm using a different draw routine, so I don't think it either has the text or maybe it didn't update. But anyways, so with this particular application, I wanted to I kind of wanted it to do most of the work for me. And generally what it does is this. It builds this kind of a file. And I've run it against my local drive here, and I think it was against like maybe I think there's like 16, 17,000 files that was hashed. Most of them are really small. I don't think I went above, I think it was 500 megabytes, but you can specify when you actually go to launch it, you can literally specify it over here. See, that's the that's the function code that gets called when you select this this menu option, and then these are the parameters that get passed. Parameter 0, parameter 1, parameter 2. That's the maximum size you wanna process, and then this adds a timestamp. You can leave the timestamp off if you want. But, but one of the things I noticed, if you notice up here, there's a hash collision. Now, these should not have content collisions unless the contents are exactly the same. Now, I haven't had time to really play around with this too much, but I did check one file. One file was, I'm not even going to mention the name of the file because it had like a lot of really slang words in it. And they don't necessarily offend me, but I don't want to, I just don't want somebody else to have to deal with that from me. But anyways, they're both the same. So it's one's in any file with has a certain name, and others in any file has a certain. They only have like 4 or 5 entries in it, and they're exactly the same. And then I came across other entries which were the same thing. They just it's interesting because when you start going back to hash files out, you begin to see that some mod authors actually included the exact same content and they just called it a different version. They just carried that version up. Don't know why, but and they just copied the over. One might be extreme any, one might be difficult any, in the title. But when you look at the actual data, they're both the same thing. I'm not sure why they did it, and that's probably like older files. I haven't looked at it. But that's where some of these collisions come from. So what I did was, in this particular master list, in this particular database, if you want to call it that, I actually include every hit I can find. So if there's a collision, let me look it up for you real quick. So if there's a collision, I record it. So, again, remember, this is a key that can have as many subkeys as you want. You just add them however you want them. And so I told it I wanted to add a new key called hits. And what I do is I locate the key. I needed to I actually have to locate the key first to get whatever data's in there, and then I have to append whatever the collision is, the hash collision is. And that way I can create a list of all these collisions. But also, if you were to look in the actual folder over here for the games, and these are auto-generated. There's a report that's an HT. It's just a simple HTML list. It's the same thing because it uses the library, so there's no new code to write. There's no reinventing the wheel. Just pass parameters to it and get my report. Uh, and it's also there. It'll show you the collisions it found, but it does record them. And I'm thinking I'm going to need this. Now I haven't come up with this yet. Haven't addressed this yet, but I believe I'm going to need that. So because I might want to be able to say okay, and also I put some little things to help out in here. So if you run this again, it will not check this file, this specific name, because it's going to assume every name is unique. It's not going to check that one again. It's going to skip it. If it can't find it, then it's actually going to hash it if it's within that hashable range. So, and you can also filter by date range. You don't have to have both a starting and ending date. You can have one, either, or both. And anything less than the starting date is going to be skipped. Anything greater than the ending date is going to be skipped. And that's you can specify that parameter. Also, I have a parameter in here where it looks at the date of this file. So if you go back over to here, it'll look at the actual date of this file. And instead of like having to change the dates all the time, it will actually update everything that was hashed. So like, let's say for an example, I download files for the day and then I want to hash those files. So it'll know that that I hadn't run this hash in 2 days. So the database is 2 days old. So it'll hash everything from 2 days prior forward. So that's kind of a little quick thing I wanted to put in there. I have it in some other files and I kind of liked it. I'm like, I like this kind of a way of doing things. And that way it kind of automates everything. It keeps it simple. So all you have to do is go over to here and I've just done Fallout 3, Vegas, and we're going to do Skyrim. There's a lot more in it. So again, this is just the same exact interface. You're going to swap the game. It's pretty quick. It tells you how many it actually loaded from the database, and you just go up here and click build. Now, this might take a minute. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And I don't want to hold the video up a long time because for some reason, like I mentioned earlier, it takes a while to actually read all the files. And I think that has to do, I don't know what the speed of this hard drive is. I think it's 5400. I don't think it's 70, 78, 72, 7200. I don't think it's that. So it does take a while, and I think the cache buffer gets filled. So it has to actually read that cache before it's going to be able to load all these files. And then once it does, you'll actually see it. Here we go. So then you'll actually see a little green bar going across. So it has to, and the way that I did the loading process is the way that I handled that is you literally can specify, there's specific text files that you can specify in those folders that extend the folders. So it's kind of like having a folder junction, but it's more software rather than hardware, or rather than an operating system. And you literally you can extend that function. And there's a few other things you can do too with it, but you can actually see it going across. So this is what it does. And then it only saves everything back and these icons are just, you can make them whatever icons you want. I just put some icons in here just for the fun of it. But you can make them anything you want. You can theme it if you want. But you can actually see how many that it processed and then how many that it wrote. If it actually writes it out here, then you know that it added stuff to it. And then you can actually see where it picked up 2 collisions. Now I noticed one of the collisions was the exact same file because I was kind of working on the file names. So that's what this thing does. So this little utility here, its job is merely to hash files, record hash collisions. So if the contents of 2 different files are the same, it needs to record that. It automatically generates a report. Pretty simple, and that's pretty much it. Of course, it'll have. I didn't get to put these in yet because I started working on something else entirely different. You talk about bouncing around on stuff, but yeah. Anyways, but I'll eventually get the stuff in here where you can rename it because I don't want to put a batch rename in this thing until I account for collisions. Because if there's a file collision, I may not want to rename something because if I have file A that hashed out to be something, and then file B has the exact same contents, it's going to hash out the same. And I don't want to rename file B to file A because they're 2 different files, and file A already exists. So that's one of and it's a very small percentage. Like, it's not a lot, but there are some there. and you can see these are probably in newer files. And this is the new format that I'm working on here. So I want the user. I do have a text string defined. I actually had to do a couple things to be honest. The way I had to approach this is this text string this thing you're looking at here right here. This from this is like the file name here. That's kind of in a single quotation. It basically has the component of whatever file name is it's given. This is a version marker. I don't have versions in here yet. This is a placeholder for versions. It lets me easily go in and find files that have x.x, unless somebody magically puts x.x in there, but it's fine. It'll be fine. So now I can find these specific files and I can rename them, removing that, or I can update them because now I got a hash. Well, in this case, there's a collision, but I'll actually have a hash of the file. So now I can locate perhaps another file that actually has the version 1 point something. That'll come later because, like I say, it's a bigger solution it's a solution to a much bigger dilemma rather than just a single kind of problem. Um, and so this is the file name. That's just kind of a fudge right now. This is specifically for the Nexus, and then this right here is a time and date stamp of when it it was downloaded. And the nice thing about hashes is if the file's small, it can hash pretty much instantly, and it'll tell me if a file like that already exists. So I can go in and remove duplicate files. So that's a nice little thing to have. And like as an example, let's say here instead of this Nexus thing right here, let's say, and what I'm going to do is in the main app, which you won't be able to see, I can bring it forward here, but I have to kind of do it based on this window, so otherwise it won't be. It'll be too big for everybody to see. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have a new configuration file. It's basically going to be like a new any file, and it's going to have site information, very very basic stuff. So as an example, let's say I download off ModDB. Then there's going to be some tags in there that says ModDB, and then whatever data, whatever fields that I want to use to help process ModDB files. So in this example, if this right here, these two numerical values separated by hyphen, it'll probably say something as simple as ModDB. So if I actually split this out based on an underscore character, I can now look at that field and say it's a ModDB file. So I know which website to go to. And then perhaps I can link it back if that website provides some kind of file search capability. But at this point, because it's been renamed, it'll be difficult to find. However, uh, I do have a whole meta file class that I use. So I can use it from I can use it from any application I want, or anybody who uses it can use it. But one of the things is it'll actually automatically record the server name. In other words, whatever that file name was when you downloaded it, that is what goes in that meta file. So that way you know exactly what that is. But I believe on my system, now that I think about it, I think it's going to be once it's moved over. And that's some of the code I was testing, being able to move the file over and handle different situations. So that's kind of like what I was kind of tinkering around with. Because like, again, I could easily just download this through Mod Organizer too, but that's going to solve my problem. But that's not going to solve the problem for everybody else. And that's too easy. I'm not doing that. But anyways, yeah, so I want to be able to have a custom string, and then I want to put the site information in here. So if it's ModDB, then I'll say, oh yeah, this is a ModDB file. So I know where to go look for it. And I don't know what contents come with ModDB, but if I can link back to the original file, then I don't know, I've never tried it, but maybe ModDB has an inquiry where you can actually just put the file name in and inquire and get information about it. Now that would be really nice. Instead of using like an MD5 hash, or maybe something that's a standalone tool where you just drag and drop a, a file on there to MD5 hash and simply call the server and figure out what it is. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like where it's at right now. and you can actually see kind of like what I'm doing now is I'm using it. I'm actually going through the I'm God, I can't even talk. I'm actually in the process of living the workflow. So I'm actually doing it. So, I always learn as I do things. So I don't know whether it's gonna be and I don't know how it's gonna work until I actually do it. And I can't improve it until I actually do it. And then my brain actually is saying in the background, "Yep, I've done this. It works. It's good. Now I can focus over here on this. I can still do both things, but I know this one's okay. I can now put my attention over here." Um but yeah, that's that. So, all right, everybody. I just kind of wanted to show you where this is at the moment. Look, yeah, look, it magically pops back. I have no idea what that is. This is really strange. But unless it popped back up from Fallout 4 when I actually switched games, that's probably what that was. Yeah, if I go back over to Fallout 4, yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It disappears sometimes. It's really strange. But it's pretty quick. And like I say, you can hash all your files. You can limit it to very, very small files. Eventually, I'll hash it. I'll hash all the files. But primarily, this would be something. Then again, this tool didn't even come into play. I didn't even think about this. I did want the hash values though, but this thing didn't even come into play until I had to kind of rename files and figure that situation out. So but this is where it is, and still got some work to go. Still got some work to do. I need to figure out how to deal with the collisions, the actual file contents being the same from two separate files. I'll figure that out, and yeah. All right, guys. I hope you're having a good one, and I will chat with everybody in a bit.